Hi guys, welcome back. I want to put a disclaimer on this before we get started that the subject of this video does discuss the medical procedure, and it also at certain times may speak on reproductive health and rights. And so if that is something that is upset to you, I tell you now that you may not want to watch this video. And yeah, thank you. Hi guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about the rest of what happened after I went to the doctors and we were worried I had an ectopic pregnancy. So my blood work did come back that my HCG level was still too high, and it was actually rising still, which is indication that something is still putting out HCG. So we did a second ultrasound. And that second ultrasound, we cleared my ovaries, we cleared my fallopian tubes. There was still that mass of tissue that was still getting blood flow to my uterus. And so basically what happened is essentially I had what's called a miscarriage. So I had a miscarriage. My body got rid of the contents of my uterus naturally. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't take any pills or anything like that. I stopped taking my progesterone. My body kind of resolved it itself, or that's what it would normally have done. But in this case, a small amount of tissue was left behind. And so that tissue was still growing. That tissue was still producing HCG. Now I want to be very clear. This tissue was not the fetus. The tissue was likely some leftover cells, or something of that. It was not actually a fetus. You know, when we did the ultrasound, we discussed, we looked for a heartbeat. I discussed with my doctor about is there any possible way that this was, because the HCG level was actually doing what it was supposed to be doing. Is there any way that this is possibly a pregnancy? And she goes, no, there's no way it's possibly a pregnancy. Because you don't have the ebb of flow like you did with a pregnancy, and I've already had up and down, and that you don't see that with a normal viable pregnancy. So this was not a pregnancy that I had removed. This was tissue that was left behind from my non-viable pregnancy. So I want to make that very clear. And so our options then were that I have what's called an MVA, which is a manual vacuum aspiration, which is basically they take a soundless suction and they take out the contents of my uterus. They suck it out. So, which is why the title of this does say abortion procedure, because that is what it is. It isn't a procedure they do with abortions as well. I did not have a DNC. Or D&E or any, I didn't have, so this wasn't scraping, and that's the difference is DNC is scraping out the contents. This is actually taking a vacuum and actually sucking it out. And so that's the option. And then if that hadn't worked, then the next option is I would have to take something called methotrexate, which is a cancer drug, or it's also used for rheumatoid arthritis. And basically, it kills abnormal cells in your body. Because if I had had the MVA and I still had HCG levels rising, I still had, that tells them that there is a pregnancy that is growing outside of my uterus, and in this case, probably outside of my normal reproductive tract anyway, which is of course very dangerous and not something anyone wants. So, I didn't want to have the methotrexate, because if I'd had to have the methotrexate, I would have had to wait 3 months. Because if I had just taken the shot or a pill versus the procedure, great. But if we had done that, it would have meant having to wait 3 months before trying to get pregnant again. And I didn't want to wait that long. So, we had the procedure. And I had to drive myself because it was Friday, and it was the Friday before 4th of July, so, nobody was off, and also it's summer, so people have kids that they have to watch. So I just didn't have anyone to take me. So I had to drive myself, which my doctor did not recommend when I talked to her when I got there, because it meant I couldn't take a Valium or have anesthesia, which is actually what is normally given to people when they are having the procedure. It's why when women are having abortions, there's always someone to get you home, whether it's an Uber or whether it's someone you have to have someone take you home because it's the medical procedure. I could not take an Uber or a Lyft because I had to go up to Denver for this, so I couldn't take an Uber or a Lyft back down to the Springs. And so I had to drive myself, and I couldn't take any medication. And the experience in itself is very violating and very painful. They do numb a portion of the area, but it's just to kind of have some discomfort, like lower some of the discomfort. It doesn't take away the discomfort. It is incredibly painful. And it does feel very much like a violation, because of the pain and the way it's done. And my team was incredible. Like my doctor, the ultrasoundist, the nurses, they were amazing. And I felt very supported with the people who I did have in the room with me. But again, you have to do this alone. I don't have anybody with me. I couldn't have anybody with me anyway because of COVID. So it's very lonely, very violating, and very painful. And so I will just say this, that if you know anybody who is contemplating having an abortion, whether it's wanted or whether they have to, like me, have a medical one, I would just urge people to have compassion. It's not something anyone would do for kicks or something anyone would do without having to do it in their own minds. I mean, in my own personal, situation, I had to have it. There wasn't any way I could not have it. I had to have this procedure. I didn't get a choice. There was no other options. So after the procedure was done, my doctor goes, by the way, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I've never had anyone not have a Valium or anesthesia while having this procedure. Not a bad day one, and not something I'm proud of. But I did find it funny that she was like, and by the way, I didn't want to tell you until after we'd done the procedure. And so, yeah, it's also very final. Not that I really had any hope that there was still a baby, but it was loss upon loss, trauma upon trauma. And it's not something that anybody wants to go through or should have to go through, and I wish didn't have to, but miscarriage is actually really something that happens often, and it's not something that anyone should feel judged for or feel ashamed of. Not really. I mean, there are definitely feelings of shame associated, I won't lie, but in reality, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You have to have it in a lot of situations. Also, technically I did have an abortion, but not really. Again, try to put in the title abortion procedure, because I didn't have an abortion. There was nothing living that was removed. But it is called an abortion, medically. So whenever you hear doctors talk about, they had a medical abortion, or they had, that's what it means. It doesn't mean necessary that, you were having anything that would by choice. Medical abortions happen all the time, and that's how they're coded. They're coded as an abortion. On my paperwork, it says missed abortion, which is basically just missed miscarriage. So I had to go back the next day, just make sure that everything was done. I had an ultrasound after the procedure, and we did not see the lump of tissue that we were seeing, so we're pretty sure we got it all. But you can never really be sure until the level come down. And so my levels did come down the next day by 80. So I was at 119 the day before. I was at 38 the day after. So it definitely removed what needed to be removed. And I had a blood test this week, and it went down to 3. So we're not seeing anything go up. And so at this point, knock on wood, it seems like everything had resolved itself, and it's done, which is sad. It's sad, and it's I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, and anybody who's making people feel shamed for having to have the procedures done when they have to be done, shouldn't, and you should have compassion. And even when they're done by choice, whether or not you agree with that decision, you still need to have compassion for the decision, because there's situations that are involved that a lot of people don't know about and don't know what's going on. But this is exactly why one of my biggest things is, people who stand outside of clinics shouting at people. You don't know what their situation is. I was lucky enough I didn't have to go to Planned Parenthood, or I didn't have to go to a clinic to get the procedure done. I got it done at my clinic's office. However, we almost didn't get a chance to do it. And so for a real minute there was a really good possibility that I actually would possibly have to go to a clinic, because my clinic wouldn't have been able to do it when I could get it done, because it was it may have been they don't usually do these procedures on the weekends, and so it may have to have been that they had to take me and refer me to somewhere else. So MVAs are not easy. I think that's pretty clear logically, but I can tell you from personal experience, it's not anything anyone wants and want to go through. If you have to have it, I'm so sorry, whichever situation. But I didn't have to get the shot, which is the big thing for me. So the next steps are, we are moving forward with my next IUI cycle. And so hopefully within a month of this going up, I'll be pregnant. Because we will have had the 3rd IUI, we would have had a healthy baby this time, and it sticks and it goes on. And so I think, don't be ashamed if you have to go through something like this, most especially if it's not your choice, because it's something that had to happen medically, and it's not easy, and it's a tragedy in itself. And I think my message on this would just be have compassion on people. You don't know everyone's story. Be kind to everyone you meet, because you don't know what they're going through. And have conversations about this. I think something that one of the biggest reasons I started doing this was because people don't talk about trying to get pregnant single very often. People don't talk about miscarriage often. And people definitely don't often talk about what it is like to have an abortion procedure. And I think because I didn't have anything medications, I do have a unique experience, because if it's as painful as so many women have, said when they've had medication, imagine what that's like when you haven't had medication. And so just be kind and compassionate to each other, because that's the only way you can get through this is by having people love you and support you. And I was very blessed that everyone in my family was very supportive. All my friends have been very supportive. My staff has been amazing. I mean, my staff is checked in all the time, and and they've made sure that I'm doing okay, and I am doing okay. It's not something you want to ever have as part of your story, but I know it happened because of what I'm going through. Again, so many women don't know that they had a miscarriage, because it happens so often, and so many women don't know that they had a miscarriage until they get sick, because it came out, it seemed to be normal, and I had what I thought was a normal cycle, and I thought it did what it was supposed to do, and it didn't. And I'm just lucky that because of being in infertility treatment, that I am monitored and we caught it, and I didn't have to get sick, and I didn't have to have anything. And sure, there's emotional side effects and there's physical side effects. I have the skin of a 16-year-old right now, which I didn't even have when I was 16, because of all the hormones that are up and down and yanking on my body. And it's a physical reminder of, oh yeah, there was a baby once, there was a pregnancy, and you're a statistic now. But yeah. So with the fear of continuing to ramble on, thank you again for your time. I know this is a little bit longer. I would be very honored if you liked and shared this, particularly if you do know anybody who's going through a similar situation, just to let them know that they're not alone. Because again, it's a very lonely process. For me, because I don't have a partner, but it would still be a very lonely process, even if I had a partner, because, if you have a male partner, he'll never know what you're going through. And if you have a female partner, she also may never know what you're going through if she's not ever gonna go through this herself. So, yeah. So, again, thank you for your time.